I don't want to play a show where I don't feel as if my band isn't being represented accordingly. Like, you know, I don't want a shitty spot on a show. I don't want to play a place that has shitty sound because I want it to look right. I want it to sound right.
Yeah.
And I don't want to really play a show where I'm not convinced that there isn't going to be a new crowd there. I think that you can play consistently, like within your town, but still find ways to play in front of new people. And whether that is, you know, taking chances on different venues, like I just said that I didn't want to, whether it's doing that or like getting outside of your social circle and playing with other bands, dropping the egos. Because a lot of times there are bands that will just like refuse to play with other bands.
Right.
You know, we've dealt with that a lot, especially in like the metal scene. There's definitely some bands in the Pittsburgh metal scene that are great bands, very talented. And I would love to play shows with them. And we've asked them to play, and there's always some excuse. I totally get it. You know, it's just you don't want to play a show with us because of X, Y, and Z. That's fine. I'll take a mental note and I'll move on.
Get upstage.
But it's like, you know, the thing is like, well, you know that those bands still have their core audience. So it's like, how do you get those people out? You know, it's like one thing where it's like, you know, I understand that maybe you don't give a shit about like having our fan base see your band play. Maybe you're not interested in growing in our way, but we want to grow in your direction. So how do we find a way to get to those people? Because it's like, well, fuck the band. If the band doesn't want to be friends with us, that's fine.
Right.
But they still have a bunch of fans and people, you know? So it's like always like trying to find those ways because like, you know, playing locally and you get like, you know, 30, 40, 50 people out to a gig. That's, you know, it's a good bit of people.
Sure.
But, you know, whenever Mastodon or some other big band comes through, there's thousands of people at that show.
Right.
So you know that there is a pool of people
There's
in
a
the
market
city
for it here.
that like it. You just got to figure out how to get in touch with those fucking people.
A lot of it's perception, though, and it's not like that perception comes from nowhere. Like people, and it's not just here, don't think that it's only Pittsburgh where people don't really tend to want to come out and support the local scene. That's not the truth. But why do people get it into their heads that going out to see local bands a bunch of fucking bullshit? I mean, like, I remember we were working the door, and I don't want to like, I don't like saying like, oh, we had this experience with this venue and everyone's looking like, whoa, I guess that's not a good venue that supports the local scene, so I'm not going to go there. But like, we were working the door and some of the locals got to come in and they didn't have to pay the cover because they weren't coming back to where the bands were. And the owner's like, hey, straight up, I don't even think this venue's still around. But the owner's like, my regulars don't have to pay the cover. And I'm like, who are they? And he's like, you'll know. Normally, he didn't let people work the door, but he was cool with me and Julie. He was like, you guys can work the door. You don't have to pay a door person out of your cut. You know what I mean? Just don't fuck with my business. You know what I mean? Like, if they're here to drink and they're not going back to, trust me, you'll know who they are. And we'd be like, hey, are you here to see the bands? And some people were just like, no, I'm just here to hang out at the bar. And we were like, are you here to see the bands? And some people were like, gave me this look where I was like, hey, would you like to drink some Iron City out of the toilet bowl in the men's room?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The look I got was like, oh my God. Like they were, you could tell they were visibly put off. Like it would be the last thing they would ever be caught doing would be come and see a local fucking band at a Pittsburgh bar. And so where does that perception come from? You know what I mean? Like, is that part of what's keeping people from wanting to go out and check out local music? Abso-fucking-lutely. I mean, that perception has a lot to do with, you know, if people think, look at the way things catch online, you know, the way something becomes viral. It just basically enough people are sharing it and enough people are imitating it until people get it into their heads that it's cool or they get it into their head that it's entertaining. Now, every once in a while something comes along that's just garbage and it's stupid and you're looking at it like, why is this popular? But most of the time that's because it has some sort of substance behind it. But there's plenty of things that nobody knows about that I like, that you probably like, that aren't popular. And you're just like, why? Why does this become popular and nobody knows about this, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's people who make good livings figuring that out and then offering those services. But the point being is people have the perception that this is a cool thing to do. We're going to go and do this. People have the perception that this is kind of a fucking lame thing to do. This is kind of like, I don't know, this is busted, this is stupid, like why would we waste our time doing it? Then people aren't going to come out, you know?
Yeah, I think that, there's a few different things with a turn off to local music, and there's no one definitive answer for this, right? One of the things that I think certainly doesn't help is a lot of the bigger promotion companies.
Agreed.
Like maybe, I'm friends with a lot of the Drusky people, so I'm not throwing you guys under the bus.
I love Randy.
But I will say this.
I love Randy.
I think a lot of the times, and I empathize with it because they're booking so many fucking shows and they always are looking for local support. And there's no way to vet those local bands. Pretty much
Don't
just
say
like
that. Come on, there's a way.
There's a way. I mean,
It's a lot of legwork for.
I mean, like there's a couple people that handle this stuff.
Yeah.
And we're talking dozens of shows, if not, like over 100 shows in a month sometimes.
Yeah.
And like two
Well,
people,
not recently, but yeah.
not recently, but pre-pandemic, right?
Fingers crossed.
So it gets to a point where, and it's not just like somebody's only job as like somebody that's handling local talent. That's not like that's the only thing they do. They have 1,000 things that they're trying to do, right? So it just ends up boiling down to this thing where it's like, oh, I'm trusting that you're reliable and that you can sell these tickets, but there's no actual vetting of talent. It's more of a concern over selling the tickets so they can help the overhead of the event.
Sure.
And what that ends up leading into
And protect the investment as well.
Sure. And I totally get that.
Sure.
But you get a lot of bands that are just not ready to be put on that stage
Sure.
in a public sphere.
Sure.
So if you have people coming out to see like whatever big band, right? And then there's local bands opening
And they suck.
Yeah. That is now 1,000, 2,000 people, whoever's at that show.
Yep.
Their idea of what the local music scene is those fucking 16-year-old kids whose parents bought their fucking tickets to play that show.
I've seen 16-year-olds who fucking rocked, and I've
Totally.
seen 35, 40-year-olds who fucking sucked. So.
Fair. That's a very fair point. Very, very, very fair point.
No, but I get what you're saying. I've been in that situation. It was back when we were doing Battle of the Bands, which if you've been in a band for a little while and you haven't figured out the Battle of the Bands is nothing but a bunch of fucking bullshit and a total waste of your fucking time, then I don't know, you haven't been paying attention.